The Galactic Council chamber loomed vast and imposing, its ceiling covered in shifting constellations, a holographic display meant to reflect the political map of the known universe. Representatives of dozens of species sat in their designated seats, their forms as varied as the worlds they hailed from, some sleek and bioluminescent, others bulky with armored exoskeletons or covered in fur. The air vibrated with hushed murmurs, punctuated by the occasional clatter of mandibles or the clicking of beaks. All discussion ceased when Ambassador of the esteemed race stepped forward, his long tendrils twitching with agitation. He was an Elden among his kind, his translucent blue skin marked by centuries of experience, and when he spoke, the chamber listened. "We must address the issue of the humans," he declared, his deep voice reverberating through the hall. His golden eyes swept across the gathered dignitaries, his expression unreadable but firm. "They are unpredictable." A rustling sound passed through the crowd, whispers exchanged in dozens of languages, translating the word. Some nodded in agreement, others leaned in curiously. A large, avian diplomat, her sleek plumage shifting as she straightened, clicked her beak sharply. "Unpredictable," she echoed. "They are outright bizarre. Last week, one of them challenged a war chief to single combat, and when gasps erupted throughout the chamber, the noise a chaotic mix of growls, whistles, and hums of disbelief. They were known as one of the strongest warrior species in the galaxy, their chitinous bodies naturally armored and their strength unrivaled. For a mere human to best one in battle, it was almost unthinkable. Across the hall, seated with a relaxed posture, was Captain Riley of the United Terran Alliance. He was dressed in his crisp uniform, a golden insignia shining on his chest, but the ease in his body language contrasted sharply with the tension in the room. With an amused smirk, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest. "Hey," he said casually, "in my defense," he started it. Another wave of incredulous murmurs rippled through the delegates. A squat, gelatinous being pulsed with shifting colors. "Humans are not the strongest species, nor the fastest, nor the most intelligent. And yet they continue to act as if they belong at the center of galactic affairs." Exhaled through his spiracles, his patience thinning. "It is not just their arrogance," he said gravely. "It is their effect on the galaxy. The humans do not behave according to established norms. They disregard traditions, defy logic, and thrive in ways no one expects." A towering ambassador clacked his mandibles in agreement. "This is true. We attempted to incorporate them into our strategic war games last cycle. The results were," he hesitated, his antennae twitching. "Chaotic." Captain Riley raised a brow. "Chaotic?" The ambassador shifted. "Your species refused to follow the standard protocols. Instead of holding defensive lines, you charged. Instead of retreating when outmatched, you improvised. You used unconventional methods that should not have worked, but somehow did." A reptilian diplomat slammed his clawed hand against the table. "And then there's their endurance. My people conducted a study on human physiology. Do you know they can keep moving even after sustaining grievous injury? One of them continued to function with a shattered limb." The chamber filled with noise again, discussions breaking out amongst various factions. The humans' adaptability, their stubbornness, their sheer refusal to conform to the expected, these traits had allowed them to rise at an alarming rate. And now, they were seated among the greatest civilizations in the universe. Turned to Riley, his tendrils curling inward, a gesture of very contemplation. "What is it that makes your kind so resilient?" Riley exhaled, tapping his fingers against the table as he considered the question. "You ever hear about Earth?" he finally said, his voice carrying a note of amusement. "It's a death world. No offense, but a lot of you come from planets with stable environments, easy living conditions. Earth? Not so much. We evolved surviving predators, natural disasters, famines, wars, you name it. Adapt or die, that's been our motto since day one." He leaned forward, the casualness in his tone fading into something sharper. You think it's weird that we keep pushing forward? That we don't give up? That's just how we're built. When the odds are against us, we don't back down. We fight. A long silence stretched over the hall. The implications of Riley's words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Observed the human with something unreadable in his gaze before finally straightening. Then it would seem, he said, was carefully measured, that the galaxy must prepare itself for your kind. Because you, Captain Riley, and your people, you do not simply exist within the galactic aerodon. His tendrils twitched slightly before he added, you disrupt it. Riley grinned. Yeah, he said, standing to his feet, adjusting his uniform. And you love us for it. The room erupted into a mixture of exasperated sighs and begrudging chuckles, the mood shifting from tense debate to reluctant acceptance. The humans were weird. They were reckless, unpredictable, and, in many ways, infuriating. The research station orbiting the gas giant Kel-X-Char was one of the most advanced installations in the Galactic Council's scientific division, a hub of innovation and discovery. Its sleek, metallic structure gleamed under the distant sun, its observation decks offering breathtaking views of the swirling storm bands below. Inside, the corridors hummed with quiet efficiency as alien researchers of various species moved about, engrossed in their tasks. Everything was orderly, predictable, until the humans arrived. Doctor of the Collective observed the newcomers with a mixture of intrigue and apprehension. He was a being of logic, his smooth skin a testament to his species' cold, methodical nature. For centuries, they had prided themselves on their scientific prowess, pushing the boundaries of knowledge through meticulous research and careful experimentation. But humans were a wild variable in an otherwise controlled equation. He watched as Dr. Emily Carter, the lead human researcher assigned to the station, adjusted a bulky pair of protective gloves. She was standing in front of a containment field, inside which a small, seemingly innocuous crystalline structure pulsed with a faint, rhythmic glow. It was a newly discovered mineral with unstable properties, something the Council's top scientists had been studying for months with extreme caution. Stepped forward, his voice a smooth monotone. Dr. Carter, the Council has established strict protocols when handling the crystal. And in no circumstances should physical interaction occur without extensive simulations and controlled conditions. Carter grinned, her short auburn hair barely contained beneath her lab hood. Oh, don't worry, I read the protocols. Eyes narrowed. Then why are you disregarding them? She shrugged, flexing her fingers in the protective gloves. Because sometimes, protocols get in the way of discovery. A murmur rippled through the gathered researchers. The very idea of deviating from standard procedure was unthinkable to many species present. The crystal was known to react unpredictably to various stimuli, light, heat, even thought in some cases. It had taken the Council's best minds years to even begin understanding its properties. But humans had only been here for weeks, and already, they were pushing boundaries. Before could protest further, Carter reached into the containment field and lightly tapped the crystal with her gloved finger. Immediately, the crystal flared to life, its color shifting from pale blue to a deep, iridescent violet. Energy rippled outward, distorting the air around it, sending alien researchers scuttling back in alarm. Sirens blared as automated systems activated, scanning for anomalies. Stiffened, his elongated fingers tightening into fists. You reckless. Carter, however, was laughing. Would you look at that? She said, eyes wide with excitement. It responds to kinetic force, not just ambient stimuli. The alarm silenced as the station's AI recalibrated, recognizing no immediate threat. The crystal's glow stabilized, its pulsing now synchronized with the subtle tremors in the station's artificial gravity field. The other scientists cautiously approached again, their fear slowly giving way to curiosity. A reptilian researcher with scaled skin, Doctor, tilted his head in fascination. It seems to be reacting in a predictable pattern. But this was not recorded in previous tests. Carter grinned, withdrawing her hand. That's because no one's had the guts to touch it before. Exhaled, his patience stretched thin. You defied protocol, risked contamination, and potentially endangered this entire station. And for what? A moment of impulsive experimentation. Carter turned to him, her expression losing some of its light-heartedness. For progress, she said simply. You've been studying this thing for years, but you've been too afraid to take a chance. Science isn't just about observation, Doctor. It's about action. Another murmur ran through the crowd, but this time, it was not one of disapproval, it was consideration. Some of the researchers, particularly the younger ones, exchanged glances, their minds already racing with the possibilities of what Carter had just uncovered. Ran a claw along his jaw in contemplation. Perhaps there is merit to a more approach. Within reason. Jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to reprimand, to remind everyone in the room why strict adherence to protocol was necessary. But the data did not lie. The Krista had reacted in ways they had not anticipated. The humans had once again proven their maddening ability to bypass conventional wisdom and stumble, recklessly, foolishly, and sometimes brilliantly, into discovery. Carter clapped her hands together, clearly satisfied with herself. So what's next? Sighed. There was no stopping them, was there? I suppose further tests are in order. Carter's grin widened. Now you're getting it. The station's artificial night cycle had begun, casting the research facility into a dim glow, save for the occasional pulse of indicator lights and the hum of ongoing experiments. The alien scientists had retired for the cycle, but as expected, the human sector remained active. Unable to quell his curiosity, made his way down the hall toward the shores of the nose. The humans, unlike most species, seemed to operate on an erratic schedule, defying the biological norms of rest and efficiency. It was baffling. As he stepped into the common area, he found them engaged in a most bewildering activity. A large, circular table had been dragged into the center of the room, littered with small, plastic tokens, sheets of paper, and dice. A holographic projection hovered above the table, displaying a landscape of rolling hills, dense forests, and towering castles. At the head of the table, Dr. Emily Carter, the reckless researcher from before, sat with a look of intense concentration, holding a stack of notes and what appeared to be a book with a dragon on its cover. Tilted his head. What is this? Carter looked up, her face lighting up with excitement. Oh, perfect timing, Vex. We're playing Dungeons & Dragons. Ever heard of it? The scientist blinked. Dungeons and Dragons. Lieutenant Harris, the station's chief engineer, grinned. It's a role-playing game. You take on a character, go on adventures, and tell a story together. Carter's the dungeon master. She runs the game and controls the world we play in. Stared at the assembled group, a mixture of scientists and engineers, all seemingly engrossed in this simulation. You spend your limited free time engaging in an entirely fabricated exercise of imagination. Carter smirked. That's one way to put it. She gestured to an empty chair. Sit down, I'll roll up a character for you. Hesitated. This was absurd. A waste of time. And yet, there was something undeniably captivating about the way the humans were engaged, their expressions shifting between excitement, frustration, and triumph with every dice roll. Sighing, he lowered himself into the chair. Very well. Explain. Over the next few minutes, Carter and the others guided him through the rules, explaining character creation, dice rolls, and the basics of storytelling in this strange, interactive format. They assigned him a wizard, stating that it was most fitting for a scientist. Begrudgingly, he accepted, though the idea of pretending to be something he was not felt inefficient. Then, the game began. Carter's voice shifted as she narrated the scene. Your party has traveled for days across the treacherous plains of, seeking the lost city of. But as you approach the ruins, the ground trembles. From the shadows, monstrous figures emerge, orc raidens, their weapons gleaming in the moonlight. She rolled a die behind her screen. They don't look friendly. Lieutenant Harris grinned, cracking his knuckles. I charge at the biggest one and swing my. He rolled a die and let out a cheer. Natural bees. Critical hit. Carter laughed. Your blade cleaves straight through the Aorc's armor, sending it crashing to the ground. The others hesitated, momentarily intimidated. Watched as the group continued, each person taking turns describing their actions, rolling dice, reacting to the unfolding narrative. It was engaging. Against his better judgment, he found himself leaning forward, caught in the story's momentum. When his turn arrived, he hesitated. I cast a spell. Carter nodded. What spell? Looked at his sheet. The choices were many, but one stood out. Fireball. Carter's eyes widened. Bold move, scientist. She motioned for him to roll the dice. With careful precision, picked up the die and let it tumble across the table. The humans leaned in, watching the result. A high number. Carter grinned. The fireball explodes in a brilliant flash, engulfing the remaining Aorcs in flames. When the smoke clears, only scorched earth remains. The beta is won. There was a cheer from the group. Harris clapped on the back. Not bad for your first game. Stared at the dice in his hand. He had been prepared to dismiss this as nonsense, an illogical indulgence. But for the first time since arriving at the station, he felt something different. The need for exact data, for strict adherence to protocol, had momentarily faded, replaced by the thrill of possibility. Humans were strange creatures, indeed, thriving not just on facts but on imagination, on the idea of what could be rather than what was. It was a concept he had never truly considered. Carter leaned in. So, what do you think? Placed the dice down with a contemplative expression. It is inefficient. He paused, glancing at the other humans and their infectious enthusiasm. Then, almost reluctantly, he added, but oddly enjoyable. Carter smirked. Welcome to the game, scientist. As the next scene unfolded, found himself more engaged than before, his logical mind grappling with the unpredictability of storytelling. He still did not fully understand humans, but perhaps, for tonight, that was acceptable. The research station was alive with a mixture of commotion and confusion as the alien delegation arrived. Representatives of various species, each with their own rigid sense of logic and protocol, had come to witness something that had quickly become the most baffling enigma in relations, human behavior. The scientist stood at the forefront of the assembly, his expression carefully neutral, though his mind buzzed with lingering questions. He had spent cycles observing the humans, attempting to categorize their behaviors into something quantifiable. Yet every answer only led to more questions. Today was no different. The delegation had gathered outside the station's primary cargo bay, peering inside with very curiosity. The humans had cleared an enormous space, moving aside vital equipment and storage units to make room for something. The floor was marked with strange white lines, and large, orange rings set stacked against the walls. A handful of humans milled about in casual attire, strange, brightly colored garments that did not appear suited for any scientific endeavor. Ambassador, a diplomat of the consortium, narrowed his large, luminous eyes. What is the purpose of this gathering? Is this some kind of ceremony? Sighed. I do not know. I have learned that when humans gather like this, the outcome is often unpredictable. Before any of them could speculate further, the station's chief engineer, Lieutenant Harris, strode into the center of the cleared area with a wide grin. He clapped his hands together. All right, everyone, listen up. We're about to introduce you to one of humanity's greatest traditions. He turned to the alien audience, winking. Prepare to have your minds blown. Stiffened. That phrase. He had learned that whenever a human claimed they would blow minds, chaos was inevitable. Another human, Dr. Carter, held up one of the strange orange rings. This, she said dramatically, is a frisbee. The delegation stared in silence. The ambassador's face twitched. A frisbee. Carter nodded. It's a simple game. You throw it, someone else catches it, and you keep it going. It's a test of reflexes, coordination, and pure, unfiltered joy. Ambassador blinked his secondary eyelids. This is a recreational activity. Damn right it is, Harris said proudly. And now you get to try it. Murmurs spread through the delegation. The concept was alien to them. Recreational activities among most species were either solitary, meditative, or required rigid structure. But this seemed random, without a order. A game with no apparent purpose other than enjoyment. Watched as Carter demonstrated, flicking her wrist and sending the frisbee sailing through the air. Harris caught it effortlessly, then returned the throw. The motion was fluid, the exchange of movement precise but casual. There was no competition, no measurable outcome, just the act itself. A few of the younger alien representatives hesitantly stepped forward. A, known for their long, segmented limbs, tried first. It caught the frisbee with surprising ease but fumbled the return throw, sending it bouncing across the floor. A ripple of uncertain laughter followed. A attempted next, awkwardly flinging the disc into the air where it spiraled unpredictably before landing at Harris' feet. The human retrieved it with a chuckle. Not bad for a first try. Found himself uncharacteristically fascinated. This was no mere exercise. The humans were engaging in something more profound than simple recreation. It was social, unstructured yet inclusive, requiring no advanced skill, no hierarchical ranking, just participation. He stepped forward, hesitantly extending a hand. May I attempt this? Carter's face lit up. Hell yeah you can. She handed him the frisbee. Flick your wrist, let it glide. Analyzed the movement, calculating angles and momentum. With careful precision, he mimicked the action and sent the frisbee flying in an arc. It soared across the cargo bay, where it started, barely managed to catch it. A wave of amusement passed through the humans. Harris let out a whistle. Damn scientist. That was smooth. Something strange and unfamiliar settled in chest. It was satisfaction. Not from data or discovery, but from something simpler. Connection. The game continued, the delegation slowly shedding their reservations, their stiff postures loosening. The laughter grew, an unusual but not unwelcome sound among species that had once approached each other with cold diplomacy. The game, so meaningless in purpose yet profound in effect, had dissolved barriers in a way that no treaty ever had. After an hour, as the game naturally wound down, approached Carter. I must confess, I do not understand how something so simple could have such an effect. Carter grinned. That's humanity for you. Sometimes, we don't do things because they're logical. We do them because they make life worth living. Absorbed that, turning to watch the lingering scene, the scattered frisbees, the aliens still experimenting with the game, the residual echoes of laughter. Perhaps humans were not simply strange. Perhaps they were something far more powerful.